Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Charmaine. And Charmaine is a life strategist with the Charmed Life and guides entrepreneurial moms with children with special needs to achieve more time, energy, and focus in their personal and professional life. So, Charmaine is certified as a life coach with additional certifications in goal setting and life transformation. When Charmaine isn't helping other entrepreneurial mamas slay their life, she is hanging with her family, playing with her plants, and catching up on her favorite shows. So, also, one of the special things that we're going to share about today in today's show is that Charmaine is hosting a summit. It is a special mom, special kids summit, and it is a wonderful thing to attend. Mom, it's time for you to be seen, heard, and supported. So if you are working with either you're a mom or you have someone in your family or extended family that has special needs and you're trying to help out, it's a great thing to attend, and it is free. And if you look at the bottom of the screen here, there's a link to join. It is on Facebook, and we'll share more about that. All right, welcome to the show, Charmaine.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so the first thing, this show actually started out with my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, so the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And so with that, I like to start off the show with asking about a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation, and if you could share with the audience how you got back on track.
Wow, I am seasoned. So there were a lot of tough situations in my life. One of the most recent ones, though, was our eldest son passed. And when someone passes, it's never really a good time because there's so many things that are engulfed in just taking care and handling that piece. And, one of the things that I definitely had to do that kept me afloat was thankfully I had been working on like my goal setting and my mindset. So even throughout all of that and the grief and having to make funeral arrangements and having to do all those other pieces, I was still able to stay afloat mentally, and our family was still able to stay afloat financially, because my husband took off like almost a year of work.
Yeah.
And because we had another stream of income, it wasn't like, oh my God, we don't have insurance or money. So we were able to have those things in place. But it was challenging because, for me, I always have this fear that I'm working on of the money running out. And so it kind of makes me grind harder and everything like that. But navigating that was a true testament to, am I really working on the things that I say I was working on? And putting my feet to the fire of, well, am I still doing mindset work? And have I had experienced growth? And, how am I able to navigate all of this while still parenting two other kids and not losing my mind and keeping, our marriage together and just communicating through that. And with any tough situation, I will say one thing about tough situations is they have a common theme. It's like, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. You're not going to grow from it. And whether it's been the money issues we've had, like we filed bankruptcy before, like, again, I have lived. So we've had a lot of things that have happened. But the common theme is this thing is coming to it's either, again, it's going to change you or it's going to crush you. And so it's this pivotal moment where you have to be really aware of, what do I want the end of this to look like? Yeah. Like, how do I want to show up, or how do I want to come out of this tough thing? Because I know it gets better. I know better days are coming. It won't always be easy, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so I've learned how to focus on that, because it's really easy to get in that spot. I'm like, oh my God, the whole world is coming down on me. Everything is just crashing. And you kind of get wrapped up in more and more bad things happen. Whereas I've learned to start focusing on, okay, So he's passed. Thank God we have a savings. Thank God we have additional streams of income, And so you begin to find the lights and like, okay, so how can we make these moves? What do we need to cut back? So it's those types of things. I hope that made sense.
It does.
Those are the things that, what I guess because I've been learning throughout, all of my failures and mistakes, that there are always things that are going to challenge us in our life. We're going to have different events that are going to just push us to our limits. Wow. And what are we going to do with that? And they're never going to come when you expect it. Like Tony Robbins tells this story where he's in a brake car. I think that's what he calls it. And he's like, I'm ready. And the guy like hits the brake and the car spins when he doesn't expect it. And that's what life does, is you're in this car and you're ready for all these different scenarios, but the car is going to spin when you least expect it. And you have to know where you're going. Because he's like, if you keep looking at the light pole, you're going to hit the light pole. So you have to look at the road so you know where you're going. I love that story. Yeah. And you have to look at the road to know where you're going, because it's no guarantee that you won't hit the light pole. But if you look at the light pole, you'll hit it. But if you look at the road, you have a greater chance of succeeding and moving back towards your desired space. So that's why I always have, like, the ladies I work with and everything, where's your life at and where do you want to go in your life? Because things are going to happen that are going to get you off track. And some of them may be minor and some of them may be major. Mm-hmm. And what are you going to do? What do you have in place that's going to keep you on track? And so that's been my biggest lesson. If I could leave that with anybody, like, know where you're going, know what you want, so that you can always hop back on track when life happens.
That's beautiful and so true. And I understand too well. I also lost my youngest son. He was 22 and he passed away December 21st, 2019. So right before our pandemic happened. And it was definitely, if anything will bring a parent to their knees.
Yeah.
And change the whole, what matters most changes in a second. Yes. And it's just, it really, I had some of my kids moved home. I have 6 children, three fostered, 3 mine. They're all mine, and so some moved home before the pandemic hit, and we were just really starting to get back on our feet and start going out and doing things. And we actually did Tony Robbins' birthday party in LA. We went to that fundraiser event, and that was our first time out. That was February 29th.
Wow.
It was a leap year. And that was our first time out. I helped run an event and did some fun things. And then the pandemic hit like a week later. And my daughter said, Mom, if ever we needed a universal pause, a time to rest, a time to heal, like your husband took that whole year off as a gift of time to heal the family. That's such a gift. And we needed that too. And that's something that if you're listening in and you're going through something, a tough situation, a loss of a loved one or other tough situation, it is okay to ask for help when you need it. And give yourself all the time. And I don't think we ever heal, but we needed more time before we got back out there, for sure. Yes, definitely.
It's always something that makes you remember and like brings everything back. But it gets different. For me, it gets different each time. Like in the beginning, it's like, oh my God. And then like as things go and as I begin, then it turns from like tears into a smile. Some days I'm still a bawling mess. But for the most part, it's like, oh my gosh, I remember this. And like, can look at pictures and things now. But life is always going to throw you those curveballs. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much you prepare.
Right. Yeah.
If 2020 has taught you nothing. And, there were so many of us that had planners. I'm an organizer and a planner. And I had like my entire 2020 and it was like, because I was supposed to have several live events. I'm like, I'm going to do live events in 2020. And that didn't happen. And so if it's taught you nothing else, it's the power of knowing where you want to go so that you have the ability to pivot as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. Not saying it's going to be easy, but at least if you have a plan to pivot then you're always able to hop back on track.
Yes, that really does make a big difference. And now with you have kids that have special needs, you have this great event that's coming up. So how did that work with losing a brother? How did that affect the kids, or did you do things differently, or what was that?
So, it's actually brought everybody closer together because MJ was a lot of work. So, there's varying degrees of special needs, but he had seizures. And if anybody, like, those are a completely different ball game in the regards to being a caregiver and not so much a parent to that individual. And so for the other kids, I am a firm believer in therapy. I love my therapist. She sometimes is on speed dial. As soon as he passed, I had the mental capacity to make everybody therapy appointments. Like, that was the first thing.
Yes.
I got like all of us in, like, for group, and we did family for about 2 months. And of course, everybody did their own individual stuff. But that, again, that was another saving grace, is that I knew that there needed to be an outlet for us to have this communication. And
Yes.
just, especially for the kid, my younger son, and for my daughter, who's also on the spectrum, they knew that he was gone, but to be able to give voice to that and to feel comfortable about that, because I knew I couldn't be there holding space because I
No,
couldn't hold my own stuff.
exactly.
And, so going forth and getting that support. But like you said, we took a lot of time off. Like, I paused my business for about 6 to 8 months before I started going stark crazy. And I love what I do. So coming back, but making sure the kids had the supports that they needed. I really started instituting mental health days. Like, I'd never thought about that for my kids. But then after this, listening to them, because each child needed something different. My youngest son, there would be days where he would just be like, I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
I don't want to. But my daughter needs people. So she continued to go to school, and I just let her teachers know, like, hey, don't make a big deal out of it. If she wants to talk about it, let her talk about it. And she wanted to be, around her peers and all like that. That's one, I guess, awesome thing about autism, is their sense of order. And
Yeah.
so that was her order. Her consistency is what made it easier for her to navigate. I did a lot of eating. I did.
Yes. What is that?
People are always bringing you food.
Yeah.
And, so there was a lot of eating, a lot of good eats going on. And I just bead. Bead isn't a word, but I was just a human being. And so that felt really good for a minute. But again, I am like, I always have this drive and purpose. It's like, okay, this is great, but I'm not serving anybody sitting in this. Like, this is like, I have to go. I have to do something. And so I got back in, and I actually, that quiet time got my vision to be a lot clearer.
Right.
So when I came back, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to serve specifically moms of kids with special needs. That is going to be my thing. And I had avoided that for so long, Sheila. Oh my gosh. I had avoided working with moms that had kids with special needs for so long because, I'm like, well, I'm not good enough. Like, I don't know everything to like help them out. And, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I don't want to disappoint them because, as a mom with kid with special needs, we're constantly disappointed by the systems and the people that say they're supposed to help us.
Yes.
And I didn't want to be one of those people. Like, that's my biggest fear, I guess, in working with my audience. Like, I love serving them, but I want to make sure that they're getting what they need, not just what they've paid me for, but definitely they're getting what they need, because we've been let down so many times, and we pay hundreds upon thousands of dollars to get services. And then it's like, half done services, or, it's the horror stories. I'm sure we could go back. It's like, oh my God, really,
I really could have probably had a good million. With
right?
6 children. I am not even pretending. That
Yeah.
is not even like exaggerating, because of all the money when you do the special schools and the special extra classes and the tutoring that they didn't cover and things that
The
wasn't
diet.
right. All those vitamin
Yep.
therapy. We did fast forward. We did cogmed. We did all these therapies.
Neurofeedback. Yeah.
Yes, everything, everything, everything. And it was, I even became a teacher for them so they could go to the private school free, because they were getting kicked out of, some of them, a couple that had really serious issues were literally getting opportunity transfers, they called it, from one school to the next. And I was like, this is stupid. This
This
is
is not helping the child at all.
no. And it was just and I was like, okay, I just have this child at home, and we barely adopted this one, little Daniel, and let me tell you, he got opportunity transferred in kindergarten. 5 kindergartens, and I was like, that's it. I'm gonna go, we're going private, because this is just ridiculous. We can't it's so disruptive. How is it that he can behave at home?
That was one of the things that we had with my younger son, because he has ADHD. And I said, like, this whole time that he's been at home, I haven't had any issues. He's focused. And I said, so it's not him that's the problem. That's what I told the teacher before. I said, it's not him that's the problem. It's the other kids making noise. And so it overstimulates him. And so then he starts doing other things. I said, so it's not really him. It's a whole classroom issue. He's just the one that makes the most noise.
Yeah.
So, it's those types of things. And he's like, I don't want to go back. Like, I like being here. It's quiet. I can focus. His grades have soared through quarantine. And I know this isn't everybody's story, but I'm like, oh my goodness. She's like, he's jumped quite a few levels. Like, we're having to pull back his support.
Exactly.
And, it's one of those things where his confidence has grown, everything like that. But the school system, unfortunately, is not built for different learners. I don't care how cute they package it.
Right.
I don't care what laws they changed. I don't care. It's not built for different learners. Everything is made for a box. And if your kid doesn't fit in that box, then there's a problem.
Now, here's the thing, though, when we grow up, the reality is, when you look at some of the greatest minds on this planet that have contributed the most to science, medicine, in many different areas, they were labeled ADHD, or they had
dyslexia,
had something. Yeah. And they had to overcompensate so much, and then they finally were freed from the desk and able to go do their thing, and they've helped so many people on this planet. And so it's not because your child may have a diagnosis or a label or something, okay, they need this or that, that's okay. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean you're not going to have success later in life. And it's just, I feel like there's a lot of people back in the day, back in our time maybe, or before, where they didn't do that.
They medicated you and put you in a mental facility, because, like, when my daughter was diagnosed with autism, it's funny now, but back then I'm like, what? Like, I was about to go toe to toe with this doctor, but he was like, it's amazing at how affectionate your children are, because, back then children with autism were considered the refrigerator mother syndrome. And like, these kids were considered to be like kind of isolated. And they're like, your kids are so, like, he's like, your kids are so affectionate. I'm like, what do you mean they're so affectionate? Like, I'm perplexed. Like, I'm affectionate. Shouldn't they be affectionate? Well, normally kids with autism are not affectionate, or normally kids with autism don't do this. And before people started to see that there are different spectrums of autism, there's on different levels, and that it's not going to look the same for every kid. You meet a kid with autism, you meet a kid with autism. Like, that's not an indicative of the entire diagnosis. But so much has changed, yet so much has not changed. Yeah. I would say, because my she'll be 20 next month. So the biggest thing that I've seen is that there are more opportunities for young adults with autism, and more things that you can definitely get them into. However, At the school level, I am still talking to parents where elementary, middle school, high, like these are things where there are still a lot of gaps going on. And I don't know if those gaps will ever be closed. You know, it would have to be like snatching out the entire system and revamping everything. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting ride to be the parent of a special needs child. Like there has to be a lot of laughter involved in your life so you don't lose your mind.
You know, and I can remember one of my youngest children, they actually, one of my sons, I have all boys and one girl, so my daughter is like the one that picks up for everybody else and helps keep everybody in line and all this. It's really cute. But this is what happened at school. They would go to her and they'd say, this one didn't turn in his homework, and she'd be like, I'm 7, why is this my problem? And she'd literally tell the teachers, why are you telling me this? And so the teachers would get angry if they couldn't get angry at you, at the person, at my one of my sons, they would go after my daughter. And then they come after the parents. And I think that hasn't changed, where a lot of times you'll walk in and you'll start getting yelled at. This one did this and that. And it's like, hello, there's a situation. We need to have adaptions. We need to do different things. Have you done these things?
It seems like he's not the only one having the meltdown now, is it?
Right. And it's like, okay, this kid, like the one that would always get in trouble, had everything memorized, knew everything, photographic memory, could tell you more than I could ever tell you about history, math, science, on the spectrum, fine. Genius level. And then I'm like, I'm really not concerned. He's smarter than me right now, so I'm not really concerned. He's good.
You really learn to pick what you're going to care about.
Yes.
I will say that, because there were certain things, like when the schools first went into lockdown, the school that he was going to, the teachers were like sending all this work. I said, look, he has an IEP. I'm not doing you're not going to drive me crazy. Not today. You're not driving me crazy. We're just, we're really just trying to make it. So this is what we're going to do. And so I did a lot of my own homeschooling stuff with him, because I'm like, this is like, I was looking at the stuff she was giving him. I'm like, he can't even do this yet. Mm-hmm. Like, where is that was the biggest problem with quarantine, is that initially kids' accommodations weren't being met. Like, they were being given like the regular work and it wasn't being modified. And then they were made accountable for that work. And I'm like, nope, he's not doing it. He will not be held accountable. I sent it to the principal, the special ed director. I'm not doing this. Right. And I would say that was the biggest thing, is that, and then, kind of penalizing kids who couldn't sit still for these wonderful Zoom meetings that most adults can't sit still for, penalizing them for that. And so we changed schools, and the school we're at now, actually, they're almost set up like they could be a virtual school. They're doing a really good job at working with the kids in sprints, mm-hmm. because they're in 4th grade. They're not going to sit there and listen to you for an hour. So, she gives them, they have movement. She gives them time to like get up and, go do things and come back and everything like that. And he likes not starting until 9:00. Like, that's fabulous for him.
That sounds fabulous for me too.
Right?
Yes. Well, that is something that's really interesting, is that even some of the private schools, when I worked Montessori, I worked Waldorf, and a lot of the parents would actually go to court. I didn't do that. I didn't do that level, but they actually had somebody that represented them for special needs to be able to carry and get the special help that they needed and assistance, even though they went to a different school.
I've heard of that. I know the district that I was in, they got sued a lot. So I remember parents, especially, I think the lawsuits are like diminishing. I hope. I need to check numbers, but it feels like I'm not hearing about them as much as when I first got into the game. Right. It seems like hopefully schools are falling in line and they are making the accommodations that they're supposed to be making. But so far, like even in a mentorship class, I just got done with a parent mentorship class. Most of the girls saying the statistics are that most parents only make it to like the mediator level. That a lot of people aren't going to like, it's got to be like super serious for everybody, but it's not like it used to be. Because I remember back then too, where it was like you had to literally fight
Right.
to get what you were supposed to get, and for the schools to follow the law. Like it was insane, easily insane. So it sounds like from what I've seen and from some of the things that I've done, that that part is getting better.
Oh,
There still are some things that are wrong, but it seems like by the time they get to mediation, things are cleared up and they're handled. So
yeah.
hoping that that's the case.
Right, right. That's something that was really placed on my heart. Was I worked really hard for different options for
Yeah.
parents to have these different rights and options. And something that still hasn't happened is equal education for all in the United States. It's based on your zip code
Yep.
and finances more than anything else. So you can have children with the same needs and they're not getting the same education
Yep.
or services because they're not in the right zip code. And I think that's ridiculous, but that's something that is better than it was. Now there's charter schools in some places. There's different options where people can get a transfer
Yeah.
to something different if they really need it. Whereas I think, God, 15 years ago,
There were no charters. Yeah. No, there weren't. My son goes to a charter now because
Mhm.
I'm not happy. And here's the gag, Sheila. I don't know if it's per se zip code when you think about public schools, because I live in uh I guess you could say like an exclusive area for schools. And what I discovered was that they taught the kids how to test.
Oh,
That was it. Even though they got a lot of money, the
mhm.
money wasn't necessarily used to educate the kids. And then when your kid had an IEP, there was a bit of, okay, look, because I had known advocate work, I'm like,
Right.
no, we're not going to do all of these. Like, let's pick one or two. He's in the fourth grade. If we need to add something else, we need something, but we're not going to pull him out every 5 seconds. Like,
I
that's not
agree.
happening.
Yes.
Um, and so, there were those different things, but that particular district, it was some of the districts in, I think it's just so, I think it's the whole system, the entire system is just shot.
Mhm.
And well, it needs to be shot, but the entire system is just, it's off. And ironically, because charter schools, it's all about money and testing. So they're really training the kids now just to test. That's it,
Mhm.
because the testing is how they get their money. And so if the kids don't test well, forget if they have any of the other skills, those aren't the major things. As long as they're taking the test and they're testing and the school can get their funds and they get extra funds and become blue ribbon schools and they get more money if the tests are better. Like that's the part that needs to, I think, be done away with. Is I get, tracking. I think this could be done with tracking, right? We're both in business. I don't
Mhm.
need to test my business every 6 to 8 weeks to see if I've grown. I'm tracking it on a consistent basis. So I know when I need to pivot. I know if I need to stop doing something or start doing something, because I'm constantly tracking. Testing shouldn't be the only time that you're tracking a kid, because that's something they learned 6 to 8 weeks ago and
Right.
not a representative of where they are now. So that's why that's where I see the system has went toward memorization and testing. That's it. Like they're not really learning much of anything now. Um, doesn't matter what school if it's a public school,
Mhm.
that's what they're doing is they're testing. And if you're lucky, you're in a school district that has somehow found the resources, or, they're able to do some other things, but mainly it's testing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's true. It's very different. Like we did Montessori. I was a Montessori teacher and then I was a Waldorf teacher because the Montessori only went up to a certain grade. And I did that because I was so tired of my kids getting in trouble at
Yeah.
school and just living in the office. And my daughter would get all the feedback of what the other siblings did wrong. And and so it was like, this is just ridiculous. And I was upset because I was like, I don't understand. Why would I have to pay for privates, this doesn't make any sense.
You know, they still do that with kids that tend to pose a challenge in classrooms. If they send them down to the office to sit in the office and marinate until the principal has time. When if they just put aides in the classrooms or made the classroom size smaller, and you know, a lot of the kids that do have challenges with being in classrooms with 30 plus kids, maybe, you know, you get that many people in any space, be it adults or kids, there's going to be side conversations. There's, you know, there's going to be no way that you can expect these kids to sit for 45 minutes at a pop in a room full of their best friends and, you know, just behave like little soldiers. You know, again, the whole system needs an overhaul. My brother did Ward off.
Okay.
And that was a great change for him, you know, as far as helping him to stay focused and everything. But yeah, it is definitely hard out here in these public school academic streets. It really is. And I really feel for parents that either aren't sure of how to advocate or, you know, because the school will tell you whatever is easiest for them. They will. No matter how much they love you, no matter how many cookies you bring them at Christmas, they're, and it's never up to the teacher. That's the other gag. It's never really up to the teacher. Right. You know, it's up to all of the powers that be as to what's going to happen. I've had teachers tell me, you know, I know this is stupid, but you know, there's not much I can do. And it was the truth. Like there wasn't much she could do about it because she was in the same system that I was in, you know, so it's just, it's the American educational system it needs a swift overhaul. Like maybe you would have thought that quarantine would have been great for them to like try to change some things that were really outdated and to make some pivots. Like I think one of the things they're starting to see, and I read an article or I saw an article about testing, about how there's going to be no way that they can test these kids. So that has been the baseline of their money. So there's no way they're going to be able to test these kids because they haven't been learning what needs to be learned to take these tests. So what are they going to do now? Right. And I'm like, oh, stop administering the test. Right. You know, but I'm grateful that I've always 95% of the time been able to create a team with my special education people in the schools because my daughter does a young adult program. And so I'm grateful that I've always been able to create a team and that I've always, as a parent, been able to keep the main thing, which is not my feelings, but what I see based on the data where my child needs to go. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to keep that perspective for so long. And I haven't really had any problems. I go in there and I do some positive mojo and some breathing. And except when we first got started in the district, once we got those bumps out of the way, then it's been smooth sailing ever since. But, you know, I'm grateful that I've had that experience. Not too many people in my district have had the same experience that I had.
And it is getting better. My oldest son had hearing problems since birth and had to do speech therapy and all kinds of different things. I mean, he was hospitalized with 105, 104 temperature with ear infection for the first 2 years of life and went through surgeries and all these things. And I actually traded with the speech therapist because I'm a young mom at this point, 18 years old, having this baby, and I'm trying to figure it out and work and go. And I had to work in order to keep the health insurance for his health. And so I would work another job and I would spend the night at the hospital. And then I had to figure out, how do I get him to talk and go to speech therapy? And we got very limited access to anything. Wow. And finally, when he went to public school, what they told him was, what they told us was, he's going to go in this ESL classroom because his last name was Spanish, was a Spanish last name. And I said, but he honestly, because his dad is from Mexico and speaks Spanish. So I was like, but we speak English at home and he can barely speak words in English right now. And now he speaks 3 languages, okay? And you know, Japanese, Spanish, English, you know, and so he's fine. But back then I was like, I don't understand why. Well, they needed to meet a quota and he passed because of his last name. And I said, but this is going to really hurt him because we've worked hard. I've traded hours after my work with a speech therapist in order to get extra therapy, because it was like $700 a month on top of everything else just for the therapy. That was a million years ago. You know, and so that was ridiculous. And I fought, and I finally just pulled him out and paid for a school that he could go to classroom and speak the language that he was born in this country that he could speak.
Right, to speak.
Yeah, and you know, they could barely understand him in English with his speech issues. So I was like, we can't add another.
We can't do that right now.
Not right now. And that would have just been so hard.
You know, one of the things I will say they have changed is the access that you can get to things. There are so many, no matter what state you live in, there are places that have grants that can help you to get services.
That's nice.
In Michigan, I know there's the Michigan Alliance for Families. Normally, if you go on your state's website and like type in special needs support or anything like that, it'll come up with a list of agencies and things that have funds just to make sure that you can get what you need based on your income level. And I know in Michigan, I don't know about in Vegas or any place else, is that they have waivers. So if a parent makes too much money to get the normal Medicaid services, the child can still get those services, whether it be ABA or if you need diapers or anything of that nature. There's a waiver because they know that that cutoff is ridiculous.
Yes.
And that there are parents that still need support, respite, and things of that nature. So that part has changed drastically.
Nice.
When we first got started, we lived thankfully in Maine. Maine at the time was this haven for, I guess, for special needs kids, specifically for autism. My daughter went to the May Center in Maine, and they did intensive ABA. This was state paid for. They did intensive ABA with her for like 2 years. When it was potty training time, they brought a therapist, came out to our house and actually helped us with potty training. I'm like, what?
Yes.
That's when they were starting to take the turn. We're accessing services. We're starting to take a turn. And now ABA is covered by Medicaid. Like you can get ABA with Medicaid now. The only thing they don't cover yet is medical marijuana. That would be very helpful for people with seizures. But different things are coming. You know, there's this push. So different things are definitely, some of the alternative pieces are coming. You know, even though I had to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars for neurofeedback, I would love to see that as something that's covered for kids, you know, especially with ADHD or other types of, you know, challenges, because it was so helpful for my kids. Right. And to helping their brain stay in a particular wave state so that they can focus and so they can get things going. They're all different. The vitamins, God, I wish the vitamins were covered. Like it's medically proven that these vitamins help this thing. Can I get a prescription? So there are different things that are covered, which are great, like the diapers and things of that nature, the medical supplies. But then things that aren't, that are still just as helpful. And it's like, and I can't write them off either. Well, supplements you can. Well, you can do use Asia, but you know. So it's like, again, like we were saying earlier, so many things have improved.
Thank goodness.
But there are still some ways to go. And this whole special needs mom journey. And it doesn't stop when they become adults, no matter where your child is. Like there's still different things as it just changes the scope of what it looked like from when they were a kid to now when they're an adult. And how maybe an overstimulation might present itself, helping them to be able to not mask, but just to manage their symptoms is so important, you know, and it presents itself differently as they become older, and just being on the lookout for that as a parent, you know. Okay.
So important. I mean, when you think about young adults and how they get into things. They start drinking and start experimenting with drugs. And if they have some other thing going on, a lot of times it'll be a compensation.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, they're addicted to something.
Yep.
And it's really something to watch because it's so easy
For them to slip.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of people that haven't been diagnosed, or maybe they were and the parents ignored it.
Yeah.
And then they have a child that's a young child or a teen, young teen, sometimes really younger than we even want to think about, that is getting into things because they are using it to compensate, to help them focus or to help them manage things. And really, to have the proper diagnosis and the proper help is going to make all the difference in protecting our kids to not have to go down that road.
That's the other thing. Kids on the spectrum really want to please and want to be considered to be a part of. And, helping them, having the conversations with, okay, just because somebody offers doesn't mean, you can have, like, that's one of the things my daughter and I, like, we've been working on, saying, no, thank you. If something, taking a breath, because sometimes, if you have a kid with a different challenge, sometimes they feel pressured to have to answer, and saying, you don't have to answer right now. Take a breath, think about it, use me as an excuse. My mom would kill me. I'm okay with that. Use me as a scapegoat. I'm good. My mom will kill me. Nope. My mom will smell this. I'll get in trouble. Yep. I'm afraid of my mom. Yes, I am. So,
Yes.
we have to be more vigilant and practicing those types of scenarios with our kids that have special needs, more so than, neurotypical, kids, because it's that repetition and it's helping them to understand and connect the pieces, and helping them to have that roadmap of what to do. And even though you're not gonna, I think that's every parent's like fear, right? Is that we're gonna try to prepare them for as many scenarios as possible. But you never can prepare them for all the scenarios. But some, you think about the major ones, and what are you going to do? Like I asked my 10-year-old, what are you going to do if your friend offers you marijuana? What are you going to do if your friend offers you a drink? Like you go over to their house and they say, I drink, what are you going to do? Why would you say no? Asking, like, why would you say no? Why wouldn't you want to do it? And those types of questions, so that they can have a connection to it. Because just saying, because I said so, I know from experience in being a teenager, my parents saying I said so does not work.
Right. Yes. So it is a tough one. And even if your kids aren't on the spectrum, there's so much pressure.
Yes.
There is so much out there now. And at a much, now that all my kids are grown, I hear these stories. And it's like at a much younger age than you'd ever imagine.
Ugh.
That things are available at school,
online,
anywhere,
yeah,
anywhere. And so that's something to really be aware about. And it's better to be over cautious than under. And that's
because you can always pull back if you see that they're going in a different direction. It's so much easier to pull back. I would always tell the therapist that let's start at the top. Let's see what's missing, and then we can start to filter down and then build back up, versus starting them at the lowest level. We don't even know if they're there. What if they're in the middle? Let's just start where you would think, start at the top. And then if we need to come down, we'll come down. But if they're good there, then let's just stay there.
Yes, very true. Now, I'd love to have you share a little bit more about the summit that's coming up and what's happening in that program.
So the Special Mom, Special Kids Summit was created because of, like what I said in the beginning, I really got sick of summits and workshops that were created for special needs parents, but all they did was cost us a lot of money and left us overwhelmed at the end. I don't know how many summits I've been to where I have a notebook full of notes and like, I still don't know where to start at. So I created it from that space. The summit is free to enter. There are going to be 11 speakers. We're talking about everything from transitions between high school, middle school, elementary school, preschool. We're talking about all the transition pieces. I have some phenomenal ladies talking about IEPs and just being advocates and things that you can do to mitigate situations with your school. I have people coming talking about guardianship, which is a really big thing. You know, are you a guardian, or do you just do power of attorney? Like which one should you do? We're talking about respite, all the different things that are kind of going on for parents right now. And always, I think it's always, now is always a good time for, for special needs parents. But I wanted to give moms specifically the space to feel community and to feel heard and to feel like somebody sees your struggle. We hear, you know, all the speakers that I got were based off of topics that I asked other special needs parents about. So I hear you, and then I want to support you. So making sure that in this space you're supported. There's only one speaker a day versus like 20 speakers over the course of 4 days or 2 days. So it gives you time to breathe, listen to, you know, what's being said, ask questions, really giving you the opportunity to digest the information. I think that's so important. And that's what a lot of summits are missing, is that you can't digest anything. They're trying to pump you with 4 speakers in 1 day. Like, right. I don't know about you, but like, especially when I had younger kids or kids that had bigger challenges, I may have had 20 minutes to listen to one person, but I sure didn't have 2.5 to 3 hours to listen to a whole summit or to sit there. Exactly. So I wanted to keep that in mind, that we don't have that type of time. We're already crunched as it is. And I want to keep everything bite-sized and actionable. So that's where this summit came from, is I wanted something that we could actually digest and not a sales fest. I'm sick of those too. Yes. So the ladies that are presenting are fantabulous. You're one of them, and thank you so much. And it's heartfelt. It's not a prepared speech. It's very conversational. It's very laid back. It's unlike any special needs summit that you've been to. Very laid back. That's the vibe I definitely wanted to keep, because I want everybody to feel comfortable and just happy to be there, and not like, you know, I'm learning something else. This is going to be so hard. We have enough of that, but learning in an environment that's a lot more relaxed and flowy. Nice. Yeah. Nice. So that's the summit, and I'm super excited.
Yes, me too. And what are the dates and where people can access the summit?
So the dates are April 26th through May 7th. And it's going to be in a Facebook group. So all the videos and everything like that will be in one space. You won't have to keep going back to a link or download anything special on, because most of us have Facebook, or at least we have access to Facebook. And so you'll be able to watch all the videos there. We are going to have a VIP package, but I call it the individual care plan package. And that's going to be $27. And that'll give you the ability to see all the videos at your leisure. It'll get you a workbook and a couple of other things. And the proceeds from that are going to go to the Autism Play Place in Michigan. And it's a space where it's just not for kids with autism, but it's definitely a sensory-friendly, parent-friendly space. Because I don't know about you, when you have a kid with challenges, those neurotypical parents look at you and roll their eyes at you like you are doing something wrong. And I hated that. And so it's good to have a space where we can go and not be judged, and everybody gets that your 15-year-old kid goes in the bouncy ball house or sits on the swing set and not go, oh my gosh, why is he in there with the babies? Mm-hmm. You know, so it's a really cool spot. They do haircuts, like sensory haircuts. Wow. They offer respite services. So it's a really cool place. My son loved going there. That was the only place we could go play with him, because he could run around like without me having to go. Yeah. You know, he could run around freely. So it was, it's a fabulous spot. We always support them.
Very good. And then on what do we look up on Facebook in order to join the summit?
Well, you would go to the charmlife.live/S as in Sam, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, K as in Kid Summit. And that's where you would sign up. And then once you sign up for the summit, you're given the link to jump in the group.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you. So I look forward to joining the summit and seeing everyone there. And thank you again for being a guest on the show, Charmaine.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right. All right. And for those listening in, stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages.